Brothers and sisters, we are blessed to be here. It is our responsibility to come together as believers, as we were called in Surah Al-Jumu'ah. And then we come together to soak up the remembrance of Allah, as it will affect how we live our lives and how we deal with the things that we face every day. Context is everything. What is actually happening at over 30 prominent universities in the United States, and now dozens of other universities in Europe and Australia? Allah tells us, وَقُلْ رَبِّ أَدْخِلْنِي مُدْخَلَ صِدْقٍ وَأَخْرِجْنِي مُخْرَجَ صِدْقٍ وَاجْعَلْ لِي مِن لَّدُنكَ سُلْطَانًا نَصِيرًا. O my Lord, give me the blessing that I enter the land and live according to you in genuine sincerity, and remove me from this place in the means that is in your service in genuine sincerity, and bless me with your support in your great authority. He says, وَقُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلِ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا. Tell the people, the truth has come and falsehood is destroyed. By nature, falsehood is meant to be destroyed. So this university protest movement all started after the president of Columbia University testified in front of Congress 10 days ago about the supposed rise of anti-Semitism at her university. It's very important to note that a group of Jewish academics from Columbia University, they denounced her presentation and the whole event in the Columbia Spectator, which is their newspaper. And they said, based on the committee's hearings, we are gravely concerned about the false narratives that frame these proceedings to entrap witnesses. We urge our university president to defend our shared commitment to universities as sites of learning, critical thinking, and knowledge production against this new McCarthyism. For those of you that are not aware, McCarthyism is a term named after the leader of the 1950s political repression and persecution of left-wing activists in this country, with a propaganda campaign that they're all trying to bring communism and take over America, serving Soviet interests. And so we look back on that knowing that that was all nonsense and ridiculous, and it was completely exaggerated and blown out of proportion for political gain. And so these Jewish academics at the college where Congress is saying they're having these hearings to protect Jewish people from a threat are saying this is all nonsense. We are not just random students at the university with an opinion. We're the people teaching the students here. And we are proud Jews, they are saying. Columbia students responded to this distraction engineered by our Congress by organizing a protest encampment at the university. They have a stated demand. They're not being foolish. They have a stated demand of why we're protesting and why we're encamping. They said, the university must divest from its financial holdings in firms that profit from Israel's war and the occupation of Palestine. That's what they're doing. It has nothing to do with some big plan to end Israel or you have any problem with Jews. My question to you is, shouldn't it be normal for college endowments to have nothing to do with military arms manufacturing? Isn't that a normal expectation? Not in the US of A. So the same demands have spread across universities across the country, even here in Charlotte. And so they've developed encampments with the same demands. So rather than inviting a discussion on the students' concerns and the facts therein, university officials elected to call local police in a full-blown authoritarian-style violent crackdown. And I'm going to quote journalist Megan Stack. She reported on this after watching many videos of these crackdowns. She said, in trying to think of a precedent where the United States police cracked down this hard, beating and arresting student protesters and even professors whose main offense is not dispersing or blocking what appears to be an open area, this reminds me only of scenes I can remember that I witnessed in Egypt and Russia. This is what Megan Stack has reported about what she's watching. Senior Israel analyst with the crisis group, Merav Zonzen, who herself is a Jew, she says, the videos out of the United States campuses are truly shocking. The only way to understand the police brutality and repression is that certain political interests want the protests crushed and gone. She's just going all in on the reality here. And she doesn't represent some sort of a hokey thing. There are former UN ambassadors, heads of state, and people who are part of the organization. It is an anti-war organization in DC. So in reality, what actually is happening? In reality, what is happening, two main groups of students, Students for Justice in Palestine and Jewish Voice for Peace, have collaborated to organize these protests against the current genocide for months now. And now they have been protesting for decades the military occupation and apartheid dehumanization of the Palestinian people long before October 7th. So these groups, who are in large part Jewish people protesting against Israel and their genocide, 11 days ago they began making encampments with the specific demand that the universities divests from companies that actively support the Israeli military. And I cannot stress this point enough. These protests are between 1.25 Jewish people opposing Israel and their genocidal mania. And so they are opposing a political ideology called Zionism, which they believe is in direct contradiction to their Jewish identity. You see, this is getting really strange. There is no protest anywhere against Jewish people. There is no protest anywhere against the Jewish religion. The historic definition of anti-Semitism before Zionism was these two things: to broad brush criticism and to characterize the Jewish people as something or in some negative way or some conspiracy, or against the Jewish religion, right? But there is no protest happening anywhere doing anything of the sort as the purpose of the protest. Now that doesn't mean that there aren't misguided individuals who decide to go join these protests, but they don't represent the purpose of the protests. And that doesn't mean that there are not Zionists who are undercover posing as protesters, as they have a history of doing things like that, as documented in videos by former Mossad Israeli intelligence agents, as well as former Zionists that have been part of student organizations who realized that when they were making swastikas to try to gain support against or for their cause, that was immoral after doing it. And they said, I can't go along with this anymore. Similarly, there are a number of people who have openly admitted that they were paid actors. There are videos of these people who are saying, I was paid $50,000 in my education to go agitate and say anti-Semitic things as though I'm a Palestinian protester. You see where this is coming from? As you know me, I don't say anything. I can't show you the concrete facts. I don't get into InfoWars and all that nonsense. That's a waste of your time. Once you mix truth with falsehood, you're no longer a reference for anything. A believer stands on facts that I have seen with my eyes. I know that that's true. I have looked up the name of that person and the references of who they are, where they work, what they did, and that is real. I don't say, oh, I've heard on YouTube somebody said, and they put some upside down eyeballs and things, and it looked really scary and seemed to connect the dots. No, that's not as a believer. We don't operate in that way. So all of this we call very Orwellian, to say the least. Orwellian is a word used to describe a situation, idea, or social condition that is destructive to what is known to be a free and open society, where there are rights and freedoms. So Orwellian is whenever there is a situation, idea, or condition that opposes and destroys that free society. It refers to politics that create brutal policy of government control through propaganda, surveillance, disinformation, and manipulation of what really happened in the past. So the man who is the very interestingly prophetic, not that he's a prophet, we have a correct aqidah here, but his name was George Orwell. He wrote a book called 1984. He envisions a society from 1984 very similar to America of today. In the last paragraph of chapter 7, he writes about this dominance and destruction of the free society. He writes, "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. You should reject what you see and know, the facts, that because this is what we're telling you. We are the ones who will tell you what reality is. Then you have to look at reality, and if what your eyes and ears are telling you is different than what we say, forget that and go along with what we say." So Allah said, وَالشُّعَرَاءُ يَتَّبِعُهُمُ الْغَاوُونَ أَلَمْ تَرَ أَنَّهُمْ فِي كُلِّ وَادٍ يَهِيمُونَ وَأَنَّهُمْ يَقُولُونَ مَا لَا يَفْعَلُونَ. And then he goes on to say, وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. So Allah is talking at the end of Surah Shu'ara. He says, and the poets, only misguided people follow them. And what he means is, in the Arabian society, poets were used as propaganda for tribal greatness that is always highly exaggerated and blown out of proportion. And to create stories that aren't even real, but people build their identity off of it. So Allah is talking about how there are media campaigns for specific power groups that will cause people to be completely misguided to the extent that they'll be walking in the valley and they feel like they have to walk there and they have to be there, but they don't know why they're there or where they're going exactly, except for that they were told to go there, Allah is saying. And then he says, وَأَنَّهُمْ يَقُولُونَ مَا لَا يَفْعَلُونَ. And then whenever you see them, they say things that they don't do. They're like, yeah, I believe in human rights and freedom and justice. They say, but why do you support these things? Well, in the end, it really is justice and freedom, but everybody knows that that is nonsense. And Allah finishes to remind us all where we fit into this. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. The oppressors will come to know that whatever power they think they have, whatever power that they are exerting, this will be flipped on top of them one day. They will lose their power. They will be destroyed. And we've seen it time and again throughout human history, where one became very powerful and was influencing everybody and everybody followed, and then that one was destroyed. So may Allah make us among those who are supporting the truth and the genuine integrity of justice and creating peace in society. I want to give you proper framing here so that you don't feel awkward. The advocacy director of AJP, Aya Ziyadeh, she said very clearly, pay close attention, when there have been mass protests, boycotts, and disruptions for over 6 months straight, and now 33 university encampments across the country, that should probably tell you as a democratic country that you're doing something very wrong and you should listen to the people. Are we missing anything here? This is the very simple response to these people who are following the poets in our society. It's the very simple response. And so, analyst Yusuf Munayyer, who's an amazing scholar, he's a PhD in political science, he explains this very succinctly, I think better than anybody else. And he gives the evidence, very solid evidence. He says the whole point of trying to equate anti-Zionism, the political ideology of the need to take over Palestine and make it a Jewish state, he said the whole point of trying to equate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism is to turn opposition to the political ideology of Zionism into opposing Jewish people. As such, then it became framed as a discrimination and hate speech, which is then used to circumvent our free speech and our ability to oppose ideas that we don't agree with as enshrined in the Constitution. He explains the basis for his fact by introducing us to Aliza Lewin. Aliza Lewin began her law career in Israel, where she clerked on the Supreme Court in Israel. She's currently the president of the Brandeis Center in Washington, D.C. Her organization is very much focused on creating legal arguments to pressure universities to crack down on Palestinian rights activism. In the year 2019, Aliza Lewin, you can watch the video I have, at a conference openly sponsored by the State of Israel. It has the State of Israel emblem on her speaking platform. Hundreds of human rights and legal professionals were called to coordinate efforts to garner institutional support for Israel in America. So Aliza told them, she instructed them how we need to do this. She said, it is important to communicate how Zionism is a key component of Jewish identity and how pro-Israel Zionists are being discriminated against on the basis of this shared ethnic characteristic. Now you might be saying to yourself, how is a political ideology a shared ethnic characteristic? Well, she goes on to share her point and to make it very clear what she's up to. She said, our laws as Americans are designed to protect individuals from harassment and discrimination. She continues, if we want to be able to effectively utilize our legal tools, we must accurately articulate what is happening as harassment and discrimination. She then says, and lets the cat out of the bag, she says, if we want to be able to effectively utilize our legal tools, we must actively articulate what is happening as harassment and discrimination. She says, if we fail to do this, we won't be able to use the tools in our toolbox. She continues, if we permit administrators on university campuses, representatives in the United States government on Capitol Hill, and the general public to simply perceive this situation as a political disagreement in which everybody has sides that one likes and the other one doesn't, she said, then we will neuter and lose our most important weapons in our arsenal. That's her words. I quote. This is not some secret undercover thing. This is an in-your-face, this is what we're doing and this is how we're going to do it type thing. Now here's where it gets really interesting. This is going to explain for you the bipartisan legislation of House Resolution 6408, which was passed resoundingly. 382 House of Representatives, Democrats and Republicans, versus 11 dissenters. With our own Alma Adams, right here, she voted in favor of this. Somehow, this is getting no media coverage because this bill, it targets nonprofit organizations with the immediate target being organizations involved in pro-Palestinian protests. This bill gives a United States official under the Treasury Department the authority to strip U.S. nonprofit organizations of their nonprofit status with virtually no limitations, accountability, or meaningful recourse, based on his declaration that this is a terrorist organization. Sound familiar, guys? Islamophobia was a bedrock founding element of this whole thing that we're dealing with. Islamophobia was crucial to have, and there needed some big event to happen. I'm just going to leave it there. Obviously, United States charitable organizations, like all U.S. entities, are already barred by law from having anything to do with terrorism. You don't need a new law to do that. So then what gives? It's because the goal of this new legislation is to revive the corrupt post-9/11 policy that takes away constitutional standard of due process. In other words, the need for evidence according to constitutional due process that is afforded to targeted groups. So this law, it has already passed the House. If it had passed the Senate, it would empower a single U.S. official in the Treasury Department to be the prosecutor, judge, jury, and executioner of our mosque or any other institution that it believes is a terrorist organization, because look, they're supporting Hamas. Without a doubt, has received far more money from the American Israel Political Action Committee than any other person in the history of United States politics, close to $6 million. And most senior congressmen and women have received considerable donations from an organization whose sole purpose is to use American power for unconditional support for a foreign nation. This seems like a coup to me. That's how it looks. It looks like a coup. Like they came in and took over, right? 7 of the 23 cabinet members of Joe Biden are Zionists. So we have to stay principled as believers. We have to be sticking to the clear, well-documented facts as we apply the sacred teachings of Islam in standing up against evil and corruption. As the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith that is narrated in Sahih al-Tirmidhi, أَلَا لَا يَمْنَعَنَّ أَحَدُكُمْ مَخَافَةَ النَّاسِ أَنْ يَقُولَ الْحَقِّ إِذَا رَآهُ. Never let your fear of what people would say or do stop you from speaking the truth when you know what the truth is. I will repeat what the Prophet told all of us. Do not allow your fear of what people would say or do deter you from speaking the truth when you know what the truth is. Just imagine the prophets talking, because that's the authentic hadith that has been preserved through the most meticulous methodology of verification in the history of humanity. And so anyone here that thinks, oh, we're just going to slide under the radar, they're coming for us like they've been coming for us for now 23 years. If you built, like there is a number of people who, if they knew the real reality, they would change the way they see it. They will talk to their Congress and they will not be Muslim. And when that happens, when lots of non-Muslims, if you know anything, you should watch the movie Selma. Okay? Martin Luther King Jr. orchestrated a protest march from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama. The first time they tried, it was all black people. And what did the National Guard of Alabama do? They beat them silly, bloody out. Hospitals were filled with folks. But the media covered all of that, as you're seeing right now how people are changing on the issue of Palestine and Israel. And so then lots of white people across the country in droves came to join them a week later. And then they started marching and the police got out of the way. And then months later, the civil rights bill that they had been demanding for years was signed. You have to know the history of where you're at. You have to know the systems. You cannot be like, I'm Muslim, I'm under the radar, I have my masjid, I have my halal restaurant, I have my friends from my ethnic group, and we're just staying, those kuffar. This is not helping you at all. Actually, this is your demise. You thought, I'm just going to go there and just, they're bringing laws that are very dangerous. And if you thought, well, we're going to sell out the Palestinian people, well, they've seen that before, and Allah is there with them. So it's our decision what we're going to do with this moment. The Prophet was asked, you know, people ask you about jihad, say, of course, jihad is a beautiful concept, and I'm fully committed to jihad as a believer. And anything you think that's bad about it, if you understood it, you would not think it was bad. Prophet ﷺ said, they asked him, Ayul jihad afdal, which is the best form of the struggle for truth and righteousness and justice? And the Prophet ﷺ said, Kalimatu adlin inda sultanin ja'ir, or kalimatu haqqin inda sultanin ja'ir. He said, to speak the word of truth and justice in front of a corrupt political authority. That's the Prophet ﷺ. This is Bukhari. This is clear as day. So we have to all be part of this jihad. You cannot sit there and tell yourself, oh, inshallah, it won't happen. I've got my dunya and all of that. You're going to die one day. Allah's going to ask you, how did you react to this moment? Because guess why they're getting so crazy with this? They are desperate. They are seeing the masses of humanity coming to learn the historic truth of the oppression and the brutal repression and apartheid occupation of Palestine. And that these people did no crime to anyone to deserve any of that. People are learning that in the millions all over the world. But the Zionist machine has worked very hard to establish itself with political institutions, so it's going all in with them. But as you see, these bold Gen Zers, that they shut down one encampment on the south lawn of Austin, Texas, and then they dispersed. And then an hour later, they all came on the north lawn. That's the spirit. You cannot be stopped. We are way more than them. This is our country. This is our constitution. This is our future. And this is truth and justice. It is the golden rule. It is the divine law. It is our responsibility to carry this. If we don't, no one else will. Ya Allah, we ask you to open our hearts to the truth. Ya Allah, we ask you to give us conviction and certainty in death that's coming for all of us. Ya Allah, we ask you to influence us to make the right decisions, that our intentions can come out as words and actions that are pleasing to you. Ya Allah, we ask you to bring our hearts together as believers and realize that as believers we carry a beautiful truth that the world will all appreciate when they know it. Ya Allah, we ask you to make us people who bring the truth to others, and we join and we collaborate in promoting what is right and good for the world, and we build coalitions that stand much stronger and bigger and taller than any political powers of this earth. Ya Allah, we ask your forgiveness and guidance. We ask your wisdom. We ask you to be merciful with us for our lack of seriousness and our heedlessness. Ya Allah, revive the prophetic tradition among us. Ya Allah, bring up the banner of truth, that there is no deity and nothing worthy of worship except you. And Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to finalize and to confirm all of the prophetic legacies that came before, from Adam to his day. Ya Allah, we ask you to make us worthy of your contentment. We ask you to make us worthy of the eternal paradise that is prepared for the pious, and send your peace, blessings, and mercy on Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.